Hello viewers, performance of contract part 3. In this part, we will see the rules regarding performance of reciprocal promises. And before that, we must know what do we mean by reciprocal promises. For that, again we have to go back to section 2F of the Contract Act, which defines reciprocal promises. And it runs like this: promises which form the consideration or part of the consideration for each other are called reciprocal promises. In short, I can just tell you the transactions which daily take effect across the counter are the examples of reciprocal promises. Section 51 of the Contract Act deal with the performance of such reciprocal promises and says when a contract consists of reciprocal promises to be simultaneously performed, no promisor need perform his promise unless the promisee is ready and willing to perform his reciprocal promise. The illustration given in the section itself is clear enough, which says that A and B contract that A shall deliver goods to B to be paid for by B on delivery. Very easy to understand that goods are to be supplied and are paid on delivery. Now what section 51 says is A need not deliver the goods unless B is ready and willing to pay for the goods on delivery. Simply it means that if no payment, no delivery. And consequently, B need not pay for the goods unless A is ready and willing to deliver them on payment. So both should perform their obligations, and if any one of them refuses to perform his part, the other person need not perform his obligation. And that is the sum and substance of section 51. Section 52 deals with the order of performance of reciprocal promises and says where the order in which reciprocal promises are to be performed is expressly fixed by the contract, they shall be performed in that order. So it gives complete freedom to the parties to fix the order in which the performance shall take place. And further says that and where the order is not expressly fixed by the contract, they shall be performed in that order which the nature of the transaction requires. Look at the illustration. A and B contract that A shall build a house for B at a fixed price. A's promise to build the house must be performed before B's promise to pay for it. So the contract is that you build the house and I will pay. The order is fixed. So first order is building the house. A has to build the house, and then the second order of performance, B has to pay for it. Section 53 is very interesting, and it says that what happens when someone prevents a party from its performance. It is captioned as liability of party preventing event on which the contract is to take effect, and says when a contract contains reciprocal promises and one party to the contract prevents the other from performing his promise, what is the consequence? The contract becomes voidable at the option of the party so preventing. And what it ensures? And he is entitled to, he means the party prevented, to compensation from the other party for any loss which he may sustain in consequence of the non-performance of contract. It's very simple to understand. If one party to the contract prevents the other from performing his obligation, the necessary corollary says that the party prevented, yes, at his option, the contract becomes voidable and the party prevented is entitled to compensation that has been sustained. Look at the illustration. A and B contract that B shall execute certain work for A for 1,000 rupees. B is ready and willing to execute the work accordingly, but A prevents him from doing so. The contract is voidable at the option of B, and if he elects to rescind it, he is entitled to recover from A compensation for any loss which he has incurred by its non-performance. So the sum and substance of Section 53 is that one who prevents the performance, the party prevented, can avoid the contract and can claim the compensation. This is the rule which is enshrined in Section 53. Section 54 deals with the cases of default and says what are the effects of default. It runs like this. When a contract consists of reciprocal promises such that one of them cannot be performed or that its performance cannot be claimed till the other has been performed, and the promisor of the promise last mentioned fails to perform it, such promisor cannot claim the performance of the reciprocal promise and must make compensation to the other party to the contract for any loss which such party may sustain by the non-performance of the contract. So, meaning is clear enough. If the reciprocal promise is of such a nature that the other party cannot perform it before something takes place or the other party performs his part of the obligation and he fails to do it, the consequence is that the other party is entitled to compensation for such loss that may occur to him. Look at the illustrations given in the section itself. Illustration A says, A hires B's ship to take in and convey from Calcutta to the Mauritius a cargo to be provided by A. Now B receiving certain freight for its conveyance. A does not provide any cargo for the ship. A cannot claim performance of B's promise and must make compensation to B for the loss which B sustains by the non-performance of the contract. Similarly, illustration B says A contracts with B to execute certain builder's work for a fixed price. B supplying the scaffolding and timber necessary for the work. B refuses to furnish any scaffolding or timber and the work cannot be executed. A need not execute the work and B is bound to make compensation to A for any loss caused to him by the non-performance of the contract. Similarly, illustration C also says A contracts with B to deliver to him at a specified price certain merchandise on board a ship which cannot arrive for a month, and B engages to pay for the merchandise within a week from the date of the contract. B does not pay within the week. What are the consequences? A's promise to deliver need not be performed and B must make compensation. In the same breath, illustration D also says A promises B to sell him 100 bales of merchandise to be delivered next day and B promises A to pay for them within a month. A does not deliver according to his promise. B's promise to pay need not be performed and A must make compensation. So, all these four illustrations make it clear that if one does not perform his part of the obligation, the other need not perform it, and in the same breath, on one hand, the defaulter cannot claim performance and in addition is liable to make good the compensation for the loss occurred. Section 55 deal with a very interesting question, and often you come across this question in practical life as to whether the time is essential for the performance of the contract or not. And what happens when it is essential? Section 55 runs like this. When a party to contract promises to do a certain thing at or before a specified time, or certain things at or before specified times, and fails to do any such thing at or before the specified time, the contract or so much of it as it has been not performed becomes voidable at the option of the promisee. If the intention of the parties was that the time should be of the essence of the contract. The meaning is very simple. The rule is clear. It is for the parties to make the time essential or not. And if the performance is not made at that time, the consequence is that the contract becomes voidable at the option of the promisee, the other party, if the intention of the parties was that the time should be of the essence of the contract. Further, section gives an explanation this wise that if the time is not essential, what are the consequences? Under the caption, effect of such failure when the time is not essential. If it was not the intention of the parties that time should be of the essence of the contract, the contract does not become voidable by such failure to do such thing. Look here, it is very clear that if time is not the essential factor, then the other party cannot avoid the contract. It further says at or before the specified time. But the promisee is entitled to compensation from the promisor for any loss occasioned to him by such failure. The effect is very clear. If time is not essential, then one thing, contract cannot be avoided. But for any loss caused because of delay, compensation can be claimed, and the defaulter is bound to pay the compensation. Now, often you come across such cases that performance at a specified time is not offered and is offered subsequently. When offered subsequently and accepted, what are the consequences? And it says under the caption, effect of acceptance of performance at a time other than the agreed upon. Meaning thereby accepting the performance at a time other than which is agreed upon. And says, if in case of a contract voidable on account of the promisor's failure to perform his promise at the time agreed, the promisee accepts performance of such promise at any time other than the agreed. The promisee cannot claim compensation for any loss occasioned by non-performance of the promise at the time agreed, unless at the time of such acceptance he gives notice to the promisor of his intention to do so. Meaning is very clear and loud. If you have agreed to perform particular thing on 15th of a month and is offered on 18th of the month, then if you accept, you lose your right to make the compensation or claim compensation. unless you have made it so clear at the time of such acceptance.